Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate, a podcast of the Colorado Business Roundtable brought to you by ACEC Colorado. I'm your on-air producer, Keenan Brew, and I'm excited today because I'm going to get to learn about design build and progressive design build. So first up, I'd like to give you all the opportunity to introduce yourselves. Let's go ahead and start with you, Dave.
That'd be fine. Thank you, Keenan. My name is Dave Crawford. I spent my career with Sundt Construction in a variety of positions, from concrete labor to CEO. We were a diverse contractor in that we built commercial buildings. We did highways, bridges, airports, rail work, water and wastewater treatment plants, mining facilities, power plants, under a variety of procurement methods. Some of our work was design bid build, but a good portion of it was construction manager at risk, or CMGC as it's known in the industry also, and design build. We worked under a couple different selection processes we'll talk about a little bit later that dealt in qualifications-based selection and best value, and we'll talk about those at greater length in just a minute.
Excellent. And I'd like to welcome the rest of you here. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Okay. I'm Bill Green, president of the RMH Group. We're a mechanical electrical consulting firm in mainly the building market. We do very technical projects, green building design, data centers, aerospace facilities, cogeneration plants, that sort of thing. We have done design build probably since the late 90s. And the firm actually has about 250 design build projects under our belt. And they've been some of our best projects and some of our worst, depending on how the team melds and progresses. So.
Fascinating. As a general geek, I'm really excited to hear about those technical type of productions and buildings that you create for aerospace and other types of IT situations. And also looking forward to hearing about what makes a design build go well and what makes it go less than ideal. So looking forward to that part of the conversation. And Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, another Dave. I'm Dave Poling. I'm a senior project manager with Wilson & Company. For the last 17, 18 years, primarily I've been working on almost exclusive design build, some CMGC projects. All of my experience has been related to transportation. So a lot with CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, some with some smaller communities with some smaller scoped and smaller budget projects, so bring a little different complexities to the process, but still, I think, offer some opportunities for owners as well as some smaller contractors and designers.
Well, excellent. Thank you and welcome all. And I'm glad you're here today. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about design build and the various types of where this came from in the past, where it's going in the future. So as someone who's not in the engineering and construction architecture industry, I'm a little bit out of the loop. I did my homework, but still don't quite understand, as I'm sure a lot of the audience isn't quite aware. How would you describe the process of beginning a project? And you were mentioning CMGC compared to design build. Who would like to take a first shot at describing what design build is?
Let me respond to that one, Keenan, at least start it anyway. We'll have lots of discussion on this today, but alternate project delivery, as it's known in the industry, and a lot of the legislative models were focused on that, and they involved construction manager at risk, or CMGC, design build, and job order contracting for small projects. Progressive design build, or qualifications-based design build, is one model. It's a one-step competition. It involves a request for qualifications to a team. It's purely based on qualifications. It does not involve price, fees, insurance. It is purely the qualifications of the teams and the individuals that make up those teams, and who can best satisfy the requirements of the owner to make that project successful. So you're really trying to make it a circular table where the project's in the middle and all the players are there to support the project, and they're based on their qualifications at that point. Now, the owner makes that selection of the design build team. You present your team, but the owner makes that selection. So the selection process mirrors the Brooks Act to a certain extent, to a large extent. For this, and when I say that, it mirrors a selection of architects and engineers. Now, this is considered like a professional service. So you're picked based on what you can bring to the table from a qualification standpoint. Price and so forth will be developed at a later time. The big difference here is for the owner is a very limited program. You just put out your ideas. It could be as much as an 8.5 by 11 or two 8.5 by 11s. But the owner is going to extensively participate during the pre-construction phase and the construction phase. They're going to be active on a weekly basis with representatives there. It's low cost for all the participants because you're responding to a request for qualifications. So it's not a heavy financial involvement. It's an early selection process. Then we're going to start design. We're going to progress to construction. Most of it's performed under a two-part contract, too. There's a part one of the contract deals in pre-construction. If you like all the parameters, you like the price, you like the schedule, you like the quality, you like the definition of how we're going to handle operational constraints and those things, then you go to step two, which is the actual construction. So that's called progressive design build today. The other model of design build is best value, it's called. And that's a two-step competition. A request for qualifications, very similar to what we just saw. Then the list is shortened down to 3 people or 4 people in most cases at that point. But you respond to a request for qualifications. 3 or 4 people get the request for proposal. Then they respond to the request for proposal. It's much different in this case because now it requires design, it requires an estimate, it requires a schedule, it requires contingencies, all the things that are associated with the project, but they're all being developed at that time by the team. The selection of the team is done by the design builder. They're going to pick the architect or the engineer, depending on what type of project it is. Remind me to come back to projects when we get done here. And but that team will be assembled by the design builder. The owner then is going to shortlist to 3 or 4 people, and they'll make the final selection of the design builder and their team. But it's a little bit different in that respect. Also, from an owner's perspective, this requires an extensive program. So it's suitable to owners, as Dave represents, departments of transportation, where they may have 100 engineers on their staff or something. They can put together a program that here's what we want on this program. But once they give that to the design build teams, they're going to have limited participation, just the opposite of what we did under qualifications-based selection. It's a very high cost for all the participants, including the owner, because the owner is putting together this intensive program. But then you're going to go away, depending on the size of the project, for 6 months, 8 months, or a year and prepare a design, a schedule, an estimate, all the parameters that go with that. So it's a high cost methodology, not good or bad. That's just the difference between best value and qualifications. And it's basically a one-part contract. Once the owner selects, listen, I think Team B had the best design, the best cost, the best schedule. It picks design B, they sign a contract, and they proceed to construction. Now, on types and sizes of projects, both these methods can apply to all types and all sizes of projects. They can be commercial buildings. This could be fire stations for $2 million. It can be convention facilities for $200 million. It could be data centers. It can be highways. It can be bridges. It can be airports. It can be water and wastewater treatment plants, mining facilities. Almost everything's available. It depends on the culture of the owner and their desires on what they'd like to have there. So you kind of, as you can see, qualifications-based selection comes without a price. That sometimes can be a hurdle from a mentality standpoint, but it enables the owner to pick the team and be present at the meetings every week. Best value requires much more program prepared by the owner at a higher cost, but they're really not an active participant for some period of time after that, or much less participation. They're not active. So, but they're not restricted by type or size of project. They both can be successful, and they both can work on almost all types and all sizes of projects.
So in that latter example, kind of speaks to some of your experience with working like a group like CDOT, where they have a lot of engineers on staff, and so they're able to use a lot of their own knowledge and what they want for that project. And then how would they go about picking a design build team from there?
Well, traditionally, CDOT's had kind of 2 processes, kind of the traditional design build where they do a qualification-based shortlist, typically down to 3 teams. And then those 3 teams prepare a proposal and submit that as part of the final selection process. A majority of CDOT projects, at least in the recent past, has been what they call a fixed price best design. So they have a fixed budget that they're trying to get a project completed for, and then typically they'll have additional scope that can be added to that project by the design build teams as they go through their process to prepare a proposal. If they're able, they can add those project components to help define and bring that best value to the owner. And then they also have what's called streamlined design build, which is typically for smaller projects. They've used it primarily for bridge replacements, things like that. And those are primarily based, they're not two-step. If you're qualified to bid on CDOT work, you're able to submit a proposal. It's still best value, but I would say price typically is a big component of that selection. But there are schedule components that are brought into that. So it's the cost of the project and then typically how long that would take for construction, and then those days are valued. That's added to the actual construction cost, and then the lowest price is usually the selected contractor. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, at least for public entities, is their procurement rules generally require some element of price as part of their selection process. So that's one of the hurdles that they try to overcome as they go through a procurement process.
And at least at face value, that makes sense to me being on the outside. Okay, if CDOT's using taxpayer dollars, price should be a thing, though in a lot of industries and situations, if you're overly focused on price, maybe you'll end up paying for it in the long run. I'm kind of curious, what are the similarities and differences between a CDOT type project where there's a lot of engineers on staff versus, I don't know if this is the right example, but maybe one of those data centers where they know what they need on the technical side, but maybe less so on the building and engineering side. How does that compare in choosing a design build team and coming up with the design and building it?
Well, typically those teams, the owners that would go to those teams may have a pretty loose idea of what they want. They could go to the team with what they call a design competition. And that tends to, as Dave was saying, cost lots of money. Teams can spend hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars pursuing a project under a design competition. And what you may end up at the end might not be exactly what the owner wants. And so at that point, the owner tends to, he'll select a team, but then perhaps change the design. So again, it's heavy involvement by the team to try to come up with what the owner wants, and yet it can be very costly. So I think that certainly in state of Colorado projects, they also have a method where they select teams on a combination of qualifications and price, and then go through a design process with the winning team that comes up with a price later. So that's a guaranteed maximum price process. So that can be a little bit easier to stomach, certainly.
And I believe you guys covered it, but just want to give our audience another chance to understand, and myself a chance to understand, the difference between a design build process and a progressive design build process. How would you describe that in 1 or 2 sentences?
progressive design build is going to be qualifications-based selection of the team. There is no price, there is no drawings, there is no schedule. All that's going to be developed in the near future. Traditional best value design build, the owner gives you a scope of work or a set of criteria. Then you go away for 6 months or 12 months and complete the design, complete the schedule, prepare an estimate, prepare a cost, all that. So they're different models in that there's not good or bad. It's just one's very expensive, one's not so expensive, but one deals in price and other things. Now, I'm going to beat you to the punch, but I'm going to give you one example of a progressive design build on a vertical project that we built. And this will answer your question a little bit too, because this was an owner. This is the Cronkite Building in downtown Phoenix. So this is going to be the key building for the downtown campus, and it carries Walter Cronkite's name and has Walter Cronkite's money and some things behind it. But City of Phoenix owned the building. Arizona State University is the tenant. That alone is unusual for that type of a situation. This one had, for whatever the reasons, and I've forgotten what they were now, but very tight. So they had, from the time we actually got the 8.5 by 11, the request for qualifications, to the time that it had to be open for classes was a total of 20 months. This is a big building. So here's the criteria comes on 8.5 by 11, and here's what they wanted out of that. They wanted single source responsibility, design build. They did not have the ability to put together performance specs. We know what we want in the building. We're going to give you a list of everything the building has to include. And then we want to know as much as we can get, like Dave said, how much can I buy? My budget is $71 million, all inclusive. At that time, that includes every change order, every problem known to man. It's all got to fit within $71 million. It's got to be open in 20 months. We want to be active every week in the design phase because we want to help guide the process. We want to pick the most qualified team. We want absolute commitment to the schedule. We cannot be 2 weeks late. It has to be done in that time frame. Here's a piece of land, and that's all we have. We don't have one drawing. We have nothing at that point in time. So, we developed a cost model. We did 5 different models in the first 7 weeks of the project. The project went from 11 stories and 250,000 square feet back down to 210,000 square feet and 6 stories, and ended up being a 9-story project after 7 weeks. And it had a TV station. It's got lots of things in it that carries that. But that met the criteria of the owner. So, again, Keenan, you asked, this was done on, and we picked the team. When we picked the team, we had the designers, we had our architect, we had our engineers, and we had our 3 or 4 key subcontractors were with us when we made the presentation. So that was our team. And then we were going to go acquire the remaining subcontractors as it became. But we started construction based on very little drawings because we didn't have time to get done. This is a pretty complex building with active TV studios and everything in it. So what made it successful during pre-construction? Team building, formal team building. That's by behavioral psychologists and so forth. How do you get that team to behave like a true team that we can do? Co-location. We require everybody to co-locate in the same facility. So you have all the designers, the subcontractors, everybody's in one spot so that you can have better communication and you can exchange ideas, not emails. Just go talk to them and exchange an idea. Good program definition. We had a list of needs versus wants. That's a big difference there. When you've got X amount of money, that's all. Definition of available budget and schedule. We agreed on a cost model, then we started design. So these models were prepared off of a drawing, 2 drawings. You go back through it and you agree, this one meets it, this doesn't meet it, and you go from there. In construction, some of the same things. Team building, co-location, pre-qualification of subcontractors, agreement on the price, the inclusions, the exclusions, understanding of contingency utilization, and we had contingencies in there because you have to, because you don't know everything in that short a time frame. So you're trying to gauge it and gauge your risk, and how to be open. And we used industry standard contracts that had a fair risk allocation in those. So it worked out to be, it was an award-winning project, got done on time, opened up, Cronkite was there, all those things. But that was a testimony to the team behaving as one. And the owner deserves good credit here. City of Phoenix provided good leadership. They didn't dictate, but they provided leadership, and we had good designers, we had good subcontractors, and completed that. But it was under a call, we responded on Tuesday. We had an interview on Friday. We started work on Monday.
Wow.
So, I mean, and this is a pretty big job at that time. So
sounds like a big job and not very long to get it done, both the design and the building phase of it. That's
pretty short in
incredible.
That time. But that's qualifications-based selection.
Interesting.
That's some of the advantages that you get under that basis. Doesn't mean it's good or bad. It fit that particular project really well, because they would have never been able to prepare a program. Like Ron said, prepare a program, it would take them 10 months.
Yeah.
Now you've got 10 months left. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. So it does take a good project owner to be kind of working with a good design build to build that right team for it. And it seemed like it worked out really well. Award-winning building on time in that case. Do either of you have a situation where progressive design build was done and it was not the right choice or had some challenges?
I would say I have examples where I think it would have been a better solution than what the procurement method or how it played out. And I think where the advantage would come in is it would have offered the opportunity for the design build team. It would help them manage some of their price risk. So the two-step design build process, typically the design builder has to commit to the price and schedule as part of that, based on any design that the owner's done and then any procurement design that he's done, which is still not at 100%. So all of the changes that could happen during the final design, during construction, typically the owner expects that to be included in that proposal price. So just, based on the nature of that, if there's unknowns, unforeseen things that they just don't know, the design build team is going to include that in their price and then may or may not need that as the project unfolds. My experience has been that they probably have not included enough. So they end up creating other project issues and things just because there wasn't enough information to price the project accurately and reflect reality.
And so that kind of leads me into my next question. And Dave, I believe you hit on a lot of these points with the Walter Cronkite building and project, but what are some of the characteristics that makes a really good progressive design build project?
Let me give you 5 or 6 from several jobs that did go well. And Dave makes some really good comments, but formal team building, I think, is really critical. And people don't think about that much in our industry. But when you have a team committed to a price, a schedule, and all those things, that's a much different atmosphere. And it rolls off the tongue easy. That doesn't happen easy. I mean, you really want a behavioral psychologist to help with that. And that sounds like, gosh, would we really do that? Well, the times it's been done, I think has worked really well on that, because everybody understands what makes the other person successful. And you have to, as an owner, it's important for us to know what's going to make you successful, but you also have to know what makes us successful. You can't take advantage of us. You don't have a team. I mean, pretty soon your team's gone. Co-location is a big deal because of communication. We outlawed email within the co-location complex. You can't email, you have to go sit down and talk to somebody. It just improves communication. Good program definition, needs versus wants. It's really important for the owner to tell us, I have to have this, I like this. Okay, we'll get the haves first, and then we'll worry about the likes later on. Pre-qualification of subcontractors. We need their kind of talent to be involved from the beginning. We have owners that tell us we have to bid all the subcontractors at some later date. Then you're missing the advantage of their knowledge. Those guys, 2 or 3 of the key ones, are going to be so good that you want them there from the beginning. They know they have to respond to a budget. We all know, just like $71 million. We couldn't come back at $75 million. You don't have a job. At $71 million, that's all you've got. Everybody understands the goals and the objectives. We can make that work. Agreeing on a cost model, then starting design. That's the exact opposite how the construction industry works. We want to do a design, then let's price it and see where we're at. No, we want to do a cost model, then we want to start design. Again, rolls off the tongue easy, but that's a very challenging concept for lots of owners and lots of participants. And have a good contract with fair terms and conditions and fair allocation of risk. everybody's got to be held responsible for what they control, but you can't ask them to be responsible for things they have no control over and take the financial beating for that. So some of that's a little bit of common sense, but it works out. And when you get a good team, they're committed to the success of everybody on that team. It's led by the owner, and you're working for the owner, and you want the next job with the owner. So it's pretty motivational to make it a success for everybody.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you for this first segment and sharing with me and the audience a lot about what design build is, progressive design build, and what makes them successful. When we return from the break, we're going to explore a little bit more about some of the misconceptions and some of the education that an industry can do to help inform owners to make a better project when they are looking to design and build something. So thank you. You are listening to Connect and Collaborate, a podcast of the Colorado Business Roundtable, brought to you by ACEC, and we will be back momentarily.